My guest tonight hardly needs an introduction. At just 37, Donald Duke became governor of Cross River State and transformed Calabar into one of Nigeria's best-known tourism and cultural destinations, using festivals, infrastructure, and creative industries to project a very different vision of development. Years later, many still point to his administration as proof that governance can create both economic opportunity and civic pride. Well, now he's attempting perhaps his biggest political comeback. Recently unveiled as the presidential candidate of the People's Redemption Party for the 2027 election, Donald Duke says Nigeria must urgently tackle insecurity, revive agriculture, rebuild infrastructure, strengthen education and healthcare, and create the right environment for businesses to thrive. But his emergence has already landed in court, with legal challenges questioning the validity of the primary that produced him. So, beyond the rhetoric, can a candidate running outside Nigeria's dominant political parties realistically reshape the national conversation? Does Donald Duke represent a different kind of politics, or has Nigeria moved on from the vision he once championed? Well, for more on this, I'm genuinely delighted to say that the People's Redemption Party's newly minted flag bearer and former governor of Cross River State, Donald Duke, joins me now exclusively in the studio. How delightful to see you again.
It's mutual, Charles.
Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you.
And we were talking a moment ago of how hopeful things looked in Cross River State all those years ago when you were governor, and the fact that the leadership of Cross River State, as forward-thinking as it was also aligned with the national leadership of Nigeria. What do you remember of that period?
Well, it was a period of hope. We tried to carve a state that was not just a political unit of Nigeria, but also an economic unit. And I believe that each state has the potential to do the same. And so we did a SWOT analysis, were able to identify our strengths and weaknesses, and invested in our strengths. Our platform was basically agriculture and tourism. Agriculture is long gestation, but tourism is a low-hanging fruit, as it were, and we went for it, and the results were evident. I mean, take, for instance, the carnival. That attracted 1 million people. You know, the month of December attracted 1 million people into Calabar. And the economic stimulus that provided was enormous. Then traveling across the state to the ranch and Buancho in the middle of the state, which is probably one of the most forested parts of Nigeria, was exciting. Kids left with memorable experiences. You know, I met a young man, 2 of them actually, and they said at the age, when they were about 10, they went visiting the ranch, and they spent about a few days there, and the mom said, "Okay, we have to go back now." And they said, "No, we don't want to go back to Nigeria." they thought they were out of Nigeria, you know. But those are memories that children treasure, and those are also memories. It gave us a lot of pride, a lot of hope in the state, unfortunately.
Well, I have to say that I traveled across Cross River State. I mean, I was in Calabar, I was there for the carnival, I went to the ranch. I mean, I remember the place, I mean, I felt like I was in Switzerland. I mean, it looked so beautiful, and because of the location, I mean, so much of it was in the clouds. You literally felt you were walking, as somebody said, amongst angels. Remarkable period.
It shows you the potential that is Nigeria.
Indeed. And as I said, many Nigerians remember what you did in Cross River State. They still talk about that today. But you've been away from frontline politics for years. I mean, why are you returning now? What is it about today's Nigeria that convinced you that this is the moment?
It's the urgency, the clear and apparent urgency of where we are today. You know, you could be a spectator and make all sorts of analysis, or you can get involved. The folks who are in charge of the country today are generally my generation, as it were. And the president and I were the class of 99. But the direction the country is going, I think, requires urgent, very urgent intervention. I do not see us going, we used to say, look, where would we be in 10, 20, 30 years? Another 4 years, if we don't change the trajectory, I see disaster is already looming. It will deepen further. I'm not a member of the ruling party, as it were, so automatically I'm in the opposition. Ideally, the opposition should come together. Ideally, the reason why you have a stable democracy in the Western world, you have primarily two major parties. There are other parties, but two major parties. So it's either or. We have a splintered opposition with a common goal, right? It doesn't work that way. So I want to be the voice of reason, because eventually I think we all have to come together to decide where this country will go. And the egos at play, right? We need someone who can help or speak to them or speak to these egos, because we're in a bad place.
I'm going to come back to that in a moment. The very important issue that you raised there of unity amongst the opposition. But you have spoken just a minute ago and at other sort of forums about Nigeria's enormous potential. Looking at the country today, and you touched on that earlier, what do you think is fundamentally broken? Is it the economy? Is it governance? Is it leadership? Or is it something deeper than that?
A combination of all. The economy is broken, it's not growing, and I'll give you instances. Let me start from there, and I've used this, I've replayed this analogy over and over again. 46 years ago, our population was 75, 76 million. Federal national budget was 25 billion. This was the Shagari years. Our population today is in excess of 230 million. Our national budget is still hovering around the 20s. Now, the value of the dollar at that time is different. So you could see the stark consequences of that. Whether you call it Boko Haram, you call it ISWAP, you call it banditry, kidnapping, those are the fallouts. Those are the symptoms of inadequacy. We have not grown the economy. That's one. Governance is poor. In the last close to 20 years, there's been very little governance going on. More of politics than governance. The recent scandal where someone sets up an office and a federal secretariat but is not an institution of government shows that there's poor governance in the system. Nothing speaks louder than that. So you have poor governance, the derivative of leadership, and of course you have an economy that is just not growing. How can you grow an economy at interest rates in the upper 30s? So you borrow 100 million and before you start anything, you're paying 30-something million as interest. You can't grow the economy. So there's so many things wrong, and that's why I said it's a totality of everything. You need someone broad to understand this, right? And the focal point of governance is to ensure that the citizens are optimally productive within a safe and orderly environment. Our citizens are not productive. The environment is not safe. There's no order. So it's chaos. This, if it's not stemmed now, the urgency of now, I wouldn't want to be around in the next 20, 30 years. We all pray for long life, and of course we add prosperity to it. Long life, endangered long life is not what I pray for anyone, not just myself.
Indeed. And you were, of course, as I mentioned, governor of Cross River State for 8 years. But governing one state and governing Nigeria are two entirely different propositions. Just go ask Bola Tinubu and ask him the challenges he's facing. Why should Nigerians believe that your record as governor of Cross River State can be replicated on a national scale?
Two things. The first thing is your record shows that your intention, it speaks of your intention to leave a place better than you met it. That's my record, not the TINAPAs and all those things, but the intention is my record. The second thing is, when you're governing a country like Nigeria, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, it's a conundrum. You must look for the best hands. The politics is over. Now go to the governance. So each appointee of government has one credo: make sure you leave this place better than you met it. It's not those who rally around you, the politics. There's enough to go around everyone. But make sure that you don't shortchange the country in the process of governance, as it were. We bring politics into government. No, they're two different things. Politics is a necessary step, because in going through the politics, you get to better understand the country. So if I aspire for leadership as I am, I'm going to have to put together a great team, right? A team that can play, that can take us to where we are. Not mediocres, because they were chanting Donald Duke, for president.
Well, I mean, you built, as we mentioned, the Calabar Carnival, and you transformed, I mean, everyone could see that, tourism in Cross River State. But critics say Nigerians today are not necessarily thinking about festivals, they're thinking about food. I mean, how do you convince struggling Nigerians who see your record as culture and tourism that you're able to move them and take account of their economic priorities?
It's all about productivity. Whatever you can do, whether it's singing or dancing, that people are prepared to pay for, makes you productive. Once you're able to give someone, right, or some people, what they're ready to pay for, entertainment, whatever it is, you're productive. So we took a plank in Cross River State. There was a low-hanging fruit, right? I mean, everyone wants to industrialize and do all those things, but that takes time, right? And we did a lot of that. I mean, we did quite a lot of that. There are a number of mega factories that were developed during the time, but that's not going to engage the mass of the people. Like I said to you before the program started, in the month of December alone in Calabar, 1 million visitors were coming in. Tinapa had the potential to attract 3 million people annually into Calabar. If 3 million people were spending just 100,000 naira each, that amounts to 300 billion. If you put the multiplier effect into it, it'll probably go up to 3 trillion, So whatever you can do, and that's why I said the primary purpose of government is to ensure the optimal productivity of her citizens. So you take what they can do easily and invest in that while you look for other things that they probably could do later. But, for instance, in Cross River, where at the time we only state that had internal flights. The state is rather large. It's from Calabar to Obudu, where the ranch is easily 5-6 hours. So we built an airstrip, and we had flights commuting between Calabar and I think it was being run by Aero Contractors and Overland.
I remember that.
Yeah, and that created traffic. Look, you and I know that Dubai survives on traffic. If you stop the traffic from going into Dubai, that's it. The same thing, I mean, Las Vegas, the story of Las Vegas was built around traffic. London is built on traffic. Major cities are built on traffic, So we created that traffic. We were the fourth, Calabar Airport was the fourth busiest airport in Nigeria after Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt was Calabar. Unfortunately, it's down to 2. We had 9 flights in and out of Calabar daily. Those numbers, people coming in and going in and the flights were full, those numbers speak volumes.
But I mean, what part of the challenge I imagine you had in Cross River State was the the absence of an enabling environment to promote what you wanted to do there on a national level, because you had a lot of other issues with Nigeria. First of all, you had Nigeria's reputation. People weren't, I mean, it wasn't a tourist destination. There were so many things that would have got in the way, I imagine.
We weren't looking at tourism bringing, the focus was on bringing in foreign visitors. Local visitors, they want to go somewhere, somewhere for Christmas, a change of environment, a change of scenery. I would say easily 90% of the tourists we attracted were Nigerians. And it's the same all over. If you go to Disney or we mentioned Las Vegas, most of the folks who go there are Americans.
Yeah.
So you only fools will thread where angels dare. If your people are not going to a destination, why would I go there? Because your people are the ones who are going to market that destination for others to come. So we were happy with that. I'll give you an example of the ranch. The ranch was, before we came in, was just an abandoned, naturally beautiful, but just abandoned. The people were dirt poor. By the time we left, the average resident of the ranch, or indigent of the ranch, had perhaps 3 jobs. We ensured that each family was given 50 beehives, right? And so bee farming, because we gave a jar of honey as complimentary to each guest. We encouraged them to do whatever sort of farming, whether it's poultry or goat herding or piggery. And we ensured that all that the ranch required was first given to the residents, to the locals, apart from working in the hotel and providing services and tour guides and all that. So literally everyone had a job. And so we also had to upgrade the place. You don't want a tale of two cities. People living in shanties and a sparkling place. I mean, the ranch was so beautiful that the Japanese government provided all the electricity that we required. That they did that. I mean, the ambassador was so impressed, and we had tons of foreign visitors, the international agencies, USAID, DFID, and all of them. That was their base. DFID, all the donor agencies had a conference on the ranch. OPEC had their retreat on the ranch. That speaks volumes. We were receiving foreign visitors. I had to stop going back and forth because President Obasanjo would ask, we host a foreign president when he's on while he's on vacation, in Calabar on the ranch. So it was a thing of pride for us, but it showed what could be done in Nigeria. I believe every state has something to sell. Every state in Nigeria has something to sell.
But it also shows what leadership
could do. Yes, absolutely.
That nobody can deny that. But that was Cross River State, and I can certainly relate to the fact that you took advantage of what you called the low-hanging fruit, what you could give to the rest of the country and the world easily. But if you were sworn in tomorrow as Nigeria's president...
When am I sworn in?
Well, you said that.
From your lips to God's ears.
What are the first 3 economic decisions that you would take within your first 100 days?
Honestly, I don't like this 100-day thing. The first 100 days will be to set the agenda and get the folks who work in the system to understand the agenda and let them know that there will be consequences for not meeting their targets. Because, broadly put, it won't be business as usual. If you are not able to meet a target, you go, right? We would work on designing a financial system that enables productivity, which doesn't exist. I said with 38 or 35% interest rate, you are undermining the economy. And they'll tell you inflation. Inflation is not caused by the loans, affordable loans. Affordable loans promote growth. Inflation is caused, in our circumstance, by high cost of governance and absurd costing of petroleum products because we don't understand the concept of energy in the world today. And are we not investing in ourselves? So we need to deal with that. And importantly, we need to work on the judiciary. This country will not move forward until we sort out the judicial process.
Let me come, well, you are a lawyer, of course, and I suspect you know quite a lot about that from personal experience. But let me come back to the issue of you talked about loans and debts. Nigeria's debt continues to climb. At what point does borrowing stop being investment and become a burden passed to future generations? Because, I mean, you touched on that briefly now, but I'd like you to expand a bit.
We're long past that point. Long past, so much so that even the World Bank is now cautioning us. You know, they probably won't give us anything more. So we're going through different routes to get funding from, I won't call them spurious, but from other sources. We're long past that. And because our revenue collection system is poor, right? We do the basic thing, we tax you on profit. If you're going to tax me on profit, I'm going to whittle down my profit so that I let go of as minimally as much as I can. The other ways of generating revenue, it could be through transactional taxes and all that, which will quadruple what we're currently getting. But you see, we need to also prioritize. There's certain things that we do, certain expenditure that just doesn't make sense. I'll bring this up. Take the Lagos Calabar.
That's the highway.
The highway.
Right.
I know the country cannot afford it. You cannot build a road on the coast from Lagos to Calabar. I mean, you can't even go through Bayelsa. Bayelsa is, even Yenagoa, the capital, is swamp, right? You'll probably have to build about 100 or 200 bridges to go through those swamps. But there's already a road to Calabar. I've driven from Lagos to Calabar several times. If the road is poor, fix it. I don't think that road is going to go beyond Ekpe, right? And I think the road serves other purposes, because I drove once on the road and all I saw on the right flank going towards Ekpe was land reclamation and all that. So there's some expenditure we make that does not reflect the realities of our circumstance. So you've got to prioritize, focus on what is required. The amount going to be spent on that road could be better spent providing electricity, could be better spent upgrading your healthcare system. Last year, I think the capital budget that was released for health was barely 36 million naira. This came from the minister himself. That's pathetic for a country of 230 million people. Not to talk of the schooling system that is hardly funded. So you prioritize, focus on your priorities, recalibrate your revenue system, look at the horrendous cost of gas. I said I was going to talk to you about energy. Everything is energy. Charles, your energy. If your spirit departs from your body,
the energy is gone.
Gone, right? So everything nature has provided is drawn from energy. The sun is energy. The humankind started making progress, right, when they discovered fire, which is also energy. We are blessed with all the known forms of energy, from the crudest, which is human. And that's what slavery was all about, energy. They needed the energy of the human to do their work. So we have all the known forms of energy, from hydro to solar to gas to petroleum, you name it, recently to lithium. So that should tell you that anything that is essential to life is abundantly given by nature. Oxygen is required to keep us alive. So we are particularly blessed. And I'm not saying give free of charge, no, but make it available and very affordable, because that is going to be a major stimulus for the productivity of your people.
So based on what you're saying, what I'm getting from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the government is, from your assessment, wasting public resources, and that what needs to be prioritized is government discipline first, and then subsequently things like tax reform and so on.
You're spot on. Yes, you're spot on. We've not shown, you see, we still live in what we term the glory days, which were not that glorious, but compared to where we are today, they were glory days. And we've not come to realize that the party's over. We now need to be austere, right? Focused, disciplined, and there must be consequences, right? Too many things have gone wrong, and people get away with all sorts. And so the fear is not there. And it's the system does not encourage accountability. So the governance structure must change. We're talking about high costs of governance and all that. Why do you need a bicameral system of legislature? You don't need it. You can do with only a Senate. You don't need a House of Representatives, right? You don't,
So political reform then
absolutely
would be a priority
it's imperative.
to you.
It's imperative.
Right.
It's imperative.
A form of restructuring.
Well, yes, we need to restructure to come to terms with our circumstance. We talk of shrinking government. You look at the legislature, it's bloated, and each one wants to live like a prince. You've got to curb that. You've got to strengthen the judiciary. You've got to expand it. My thinking, if I go to court, I should get judgment within 90 days. The politicians have done it for themselves. From the tribunal to the Supreme Court is 6 months. That is good for everyone too. You're going to be a major source of disincentive for FDIs if they know they can't get justice in your system. And that's why when you go into transactions, they put arbitration in London and Switzerland and all that, because they don't trust your system. You want to make money in this country, but if there's a problem, you want to run to London to sort out the problem. I think it's vexatious, and I also think that is in itself an insult to the nation. You like our resources, but you don't trust the system. So there's so many things we've got to do. So when people talk of 100 days, and that's why you need a cabinet of doers, expert doers who know what they're going to do, not just political appointees, because there's so much work to be done in every sector of the country.
Very interesting. And I'm going to turn to the issue of security, because that's absolutely imperative. But if we run out of time, we're going to take a break and come back and continue the chat. So we haven't ended by any stretch of the imagination. But let me turn to that issue of security. Every presidential candidate, and I've spoken to all the prominent ones, say security is their priority. Specifically, what would you do differently?
Charles, anything that is essential has to be local. So for instance, one of the pitfalls of electricity in our country is that we have not localized it. So healthcare, for instance, has to be local to be effective. Schools have to be local to be effective. Water, you can't produce water in Calabar, move it to Sokoto. You've got to find water within the locality. The same thing with security. You've got to localize it. You've got even the military, right? You've got to establish, I hear they've increased the number of divisions.
Divisions, right, in the army.
To 12.
Yeah.
I would even go further than that, right? And that's why in the United States they have national guards in literally every state, because they've got to deal with those issues within the ambient, within the state. So you can't have a division, for instance, in Kaduna dealing with issues in Borno. They're so far apart. That is one. Two, policing. Yes, we talk about local or state policing.
I was going to ask you about state police.
I agree with it. I think we ought to have done this a long time ago.
Right.
In the colonial times, we even had local police and all that.
But how do you prevent governors from turning state police into political
militias?
That's the big fear.
Presidents have been abusing it. But you see, that's why you need a judicial system that works, so that they can curb the excesses. Okay? You can't do one without the other. 80% of policing is intelligence gathering. Only 20% is enforcement, right? We ought to encourage, in fact, build, I think the United Nations says 1 policeman per 100 people or 200 people, something like that. The federal government cannot provide all that. So they're the federal police, like your FBI, like your Scotland Yard and all that. The state government, you can't say I'm a chief security officer and I'm powerless. So they would have their own police. I would rather they focus more on intelligence gathering and work alongside the federal police. But they've got to be armed. But we don't want them carrying AK-47s, because it just looks as if, we are in a military state and all that. So the GSS always carry guns and all that. No one sees them because they carry, pistols and all that. But beyond that, their primary purpose should be intelligence gathering. In advanced countries, let's take England, countries that we're familiar with. You commit a crime, I assure you within 72 hours they'll fish you out because they know who is there, they have an idea.
And it's intelligence.
It's intelligence, it's gathering. So if there's a crime in Mabushi, for instance, the DPO, the police folks there, they're the first people who ask you, how come? If there's a crime in your home, you'll ask your security man. It's the same thing. And if the DPO or whoever it is unable to answer, then it's a gross dereliction of duty. You should be fired. And those are the consequences I'm talking about. You have herders or people going to a whole community and ransacking the community, right? As that virtually happens every week, kidnapping and all that. And no one is held accountable. It's akin to leaving your security man on seat after your house has been burgled. So there's either connivance, right, or negligence. Either one has to be dealt with. So as long as you hold people responsible, man, if you're a DPO in an area and something goes wrong, you know that I'm going to lose my job if something goes, you'll sit up. You will get your people out of the office to go find out. You want to know who lives here, who are the people here, who have these tendencies. And believe me, you'll be surprised. The police know most of them. But because there are no consequences, there's connivance, they get away with it. So once you institute the policy of consequence, you've solved half your problem. But of course, you've got to strengthen the security. You've got to get a lot more people involved. There are too few of them involved. You've got to remunerate them properly, to incentivize them and all that, because no one is going to put their life on the line. You know, look at the soldiers that are being killed. They probably, the other day on social media, there was the wife of soldiers who had been killed in the fronts, right? Were complaining nothing has been given to them. So there must be a policy, either insurance or something like that. If you die in the course of duty or you're hurt, you'll be looked after. We don't have a veterans organization in Nigeria. So you go, you get hurt, you get shot, you're amputated, and you're gone. So we've got to look at all those things, but demand from them. Give them what is required, but demand from them.
More than 2 decades after redefining what a Nigerian state could become through tourism, culture, and urban renewal, the former governor of Cross River State, Donald Duke, is back. This time, he's asking Nigerians to imagine him not as a former governor, but as president. His supporters call him a visionary whose ideas were simply ahead of their time. His critics ask whether vision alone can survive the brutal arithmetic of Nigerian politics. And with a court challenge already hanging over his emergence as the presidential candidate of the People's Redemption Party, his journey has barely begun. So, in a political season dominated by familiar power blocks, can Donald Duke still persuade Nigerians that ideas and the collective will of the people, not political machinery, can win the day? And the presidential candidate of the People's Redemption Party and former governor of Cross River State, Donald Duke, is still with me exclusively in the studio. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us.
Thank you.
And I have to say that I have this awful temptation to sometimes call you Donald Trump,
well,
thank heavens I didn't make that mistake.
There was a time I was called Donald Duck, right? So,
well, some would think that perhaps calling you Donald Duck is better than calling you Donald Trump.
Well, it depends on who you're speaking to.
Indeed. But thank you very much indeed for staying with us. You've spoken about agriculture. Is Nigeria's biggest problem, as you hinted earlier, production, or the fact that farmers can no longer safely access their farms?
I said to you, the basic function of government is to ensure the productivity of our citizens within a safe and orderly environment. That sums it all. We've got to take security seriously. You must be able to move through the length and breadth of this country without harassment. Charles, I went to school in Zaria. My first time in Zaria to register in university, I went by bus from Lagos going to Kano and stopped off at Zaria. We arrived Zaria at 3 a.m. in front of a mobile petrol station. And the security man, whom we call my guard, just dropped a bench, asked me to sit down till daybreak. That was Nigeria. And this was in the mid-70s. Today, you dare not do that. You want to arrive Zaria at the peak of the sun, right? You don't even want to get there at dusk. Nigeria is not getting better, right? Nigeria is getting worse. And we've got to face it. We've got to be honest with ourselves. You know, when you're ill, the first thing is to get proper diagnosis of your state of health and what is wrong with you. But when you keep on hiding it or pretending it doesn't exist, it'll eclipse you.
Let me turn to something that is a big, big problem in this country, that not just for politicians, but across the board, and it fuels the perception, international perception of Nigeria, and that is the issue of corruption. You are one of the few governors that has escaped corruption allegations that have dogged many others. Why do you think corruption remains so deeply entrenched in Nigeria, despite decades of anti-corruption campaign? And I remember it was when you were governor, during that 1999 to 2007 period, that President Obasanjo started the EFCC and all the rest of it, and the whole issue of corruption went up sort of higher on the agenda, but it seems to be somewhere in between at the moment.
Failure of consequences. You know, earlier I talked of this spurious agency that was set up. I don't recall the fellow's name. The audacity.
Adeyemi. Yeah.
The audacity of doing that, right? It's so audacious. I really can't wrap my mind around it. Opening accounts in the central bank, getting an office at the federal secretariat, getting people posted to you. The fellow doing it is doing it with the mindset that nothing would happen to him. So there are no consequences. The moment you instill consequences into your governance system, yes, there'll still be corruption, but it will be severely mitigated.
But when you say consequences, because he clearly has been arrested and there is an investigation at the moment, some would argue that that is a form of consequence. But when you talk about consequence, you're talking about the broader sort of, because some people say that others must have colluded with him.
Absolutely, but I'm talking of consequences, not just on his matter, but generally. That's the norm in the society, right? There are probably several cases, probably even worse than his, that haven't come up, you know? Because for you to sit down and conceive that, there must have been some precedent somewhere. Probably he took it a step further. Probably there are others that have gone even further than that, right? But let's see what will come out of it. There are many cases that have been swept under. After a while, something happens and you don't hear about it again. I'm afraid to say that this may be one of such. In another couple of months, it will just go blank, and we'll go on to other things, because there's always something exciting in the system about to happen or happening. So the lack of consequences encourages you to dare. You know, he who dares wins, and that's what Nigeria has become. It's a jungle.
Well, let's turn to the political culture in this country, of which you are a part. Has Nigeria become a country where elections are won less by ideas than by structures, money, and patronage? Unfortunately.
You know, the money which ought to be for logistics and all that is to sell ideas. Nobody talks about ideas. The APC is not talking about making things or how they will get things better, right? They just vote for us. And that's why, you know, the insult of giving rice and sugar and salt to the populace is so undermining, so insultive. On election day, 10, 15,000 is given to voters. Where are we going? So we are unfortunately running a system that your ideas don't mean anything, right? Put together what we call structures that are able to distribute funds right across the country, and you win.
Well, given that, I mean, you're not running under the APC, which at the moment is considered to be the preeminent party.
By far.
Realistically, can a third force candidate such as yourself overcome that entrenched political machinery?
If I don't try, I have lost, right? These are famous words by Jesse Jackson. In 1984, he was asked by a reporter, Mr. Jackson, what makes you think you can win? He said, if I run, I might lose. If I don't run, I'm guaranteed to lose. A house is on fire, and I say, well, I'm not able to put it off, so let me walk away. Whatever effort you can do and attract like minds to come together to save this country, we ought to do it. It's a Herculean task. I have no illusions about it. But we must keep on trying. As long as there's life in us, we must keep on trying.
Nevertheless, I mean, it must be clear, and again, you touched on this earlier, but it must be clear that you remaining in the race would split opposition votes. Would you consider stepping aside for another candidate, or are you in this race to the finish?
I would like to be in the race to finish, but you know, regardless of what party you're in, as long as you're not in the APC, you're opposition. We need to talk, right? We need to let the egos come down, right? We have a common objective, right? And that's why in some climes they have a government of national unity. You need to put broadly the opposition together, right, to tackle this country, because no one individual, no matter how smart you may think you are, and no one individual can get it right. We all have to put.
But do you think that is possible? Because, I mean, you had the whole idea of the ADC was to build that opposition coalition. I believe you were initially in the ADC.
Yes, I was.
Peter Obi was in the ADC. Virtually everyone in the opposition came in there, but now they've all gone away.
We're all splintered.
Yeah.
And that's why I said I'm back in this race. You see, I alluded to a football match. There are 100,000 people in the stadium. Each one is a soccer buff. Each one believes he knows better than the players on the field, but only the 25 people, the 22 players, the linesmen and the referee would decide the outcome. The problem with the opposition, huge egos, right? They need a voice of reason within their ranks. I want to be that voice of reason, be able to talk to them that, guys, look, if our common objective, right, is on seating APC, you're not going to do it with a fractured opposition. We saw it happen in 23, right? And we're repeating it again. It means that there's something wrong with our senses. We're not thinking straight.
Now, your emergence, because for the moment, I mean, the opposition hasn't come together yet, although you're saying that that's something you'd like to encourage. Your emergence as the PRP candidate is being challenged in courts. Are you confident that you'll still be your party's candidate when the 2027 election begins?
Charles, I'm a lawyer. I can look at a case and decipher its merits. It's spurious. The guy says I wasn't a member of the party. The party says he's a member, right? Even a court has said that, you know. So I'm not worried about him. He's a distraction. Maybe he's trying to let his ego down slowly. I've reached out to him. He's rebuffed it. But, you know, I'm not going to stop what I'm doing because someone is running to court. And it's become a culture in Nigeria. The moment you lose an election, you run to the courts. And the courts entertain this nonsense, right? And drag it on and all that. When I ran under SDP, I had to go right through to the Supreme Court, right, to get the mandate. By the time the Supreme Court gave judgment, it was just about a week or two to the elections. So it's become the culture of failure. Once you fail, you go try to get respite at the Supreme Court or in the court, in the judicial system. No, I'm confident of the case we have. I have the party behind me, and the grounds for going to court are silly, putting it lightly.
Right. Now, Nigeria has produced some very smart politicians, charismatic politicians like yourself, many people would admit, and powerful politicians. What, in your view, has been missing from Nigerian leadership since 1999?
Selfish, self-centered. People have found their way into power. It's about personal aggrandizement, and not just monetary. It's me, myself, and I. And that's the problem with the opposition, right? We all can't be president, you know, but we all have to look at the objectives. Where do we want to take our country to? And once we find that commonality, we should come together. But it's all ego. I have to do it.
Right.
If I can do it, no one else can do it. And that's where we are. And if you're the government in power, you're going to take advantage of that.
Right.
So really, that's the problem.
Now, I've got literally 1 minute to end this fascinating conversation. Talk to the Nigerian people directly. They become deeply cynical. They've heard promises before. Why should they believe that Donald Duke is different?
I have a track record. I took a state that was barely on the map, along with some others, because I hate saying that I did it on my own. But I led a team, right? Carefully selected. And a lot of what I've said to you, I put it to work, and it worked. You've got to look at the track record of those who have put themselves forward. What did they do in the past? Because if you don't, then you're going to be experimenting on this fellow, no matter how eloquent he or she may be. What were you doing in the past? If you were in the private sector, how successful were you in the private sector? If you're in the public sector, if you held public office before, what have you done? What are your tendencies? What are your, do you have criminal records and all that? All those things have to be looked at. So that's what I'm selling, the ability to get things done.
Okay. On that note, I want to thank you very much indeed. Donald Duke is the presidential candidate of the People's Redemption Party and former governor of Cross River State. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time.